Welcome to the Blessed Community Church podcast series. Here we delve into a variety of subjects aimed at helping you grow in your faith and deepen your understanding of Christianity. Follow us on social media at BlessedCC and visit our website blessedcc.org for more information. We hope you enjoy the podcast and we look forward to hearing from you soon.
Well, welcome to podcasts, some of which might be just me, but many, I think, will be with conversation. And as a way to start, I thought a conversation with Naz, an old friend of mine, would be quite pertinent. We're looking at really the early history of our church, which in those days we named Ealing Fellowship and subsequently Ealing Christian Fellowship. The roots really of what is now Bless. And Naz and I met each other, I've just calculated, between 45 and 50 years ago as teenagers, probably late teenagers. And we were both Christians already. Naz had a different route maybe from me, but we both, I think at that time, were excited by what was happening in the church and subsequently, of course, ended up working very closely together and remaining good friends for all that time. So Naz, I'm going to ask you first if you could just sort of tell us a little bit about your early experiences of coming in contact with what was John and Anne, Spencer and their group.
Thanks, Ian, and hi to everybody listening. So I was a member of what was called Ealing Common Crusader class back in the day. Now they've been restarred as Urban Saints, which I think is a better name. And my good friend Adrian Mountford was also part of that Crusader class. And what's pertinent about it was that we really wondered whether there was going to be a sort of fresh church type initiative coming out of that Crusader class because of the commitment that we all felt to Christ and each other. But for a number of reasons, that didn't happen. And I was at a time probably feeling slightly disillusioned with the church structure and where it was going. So Adrian asked me to come and join this group or have a look at this group that was meeting in the Upper Amherst room of Haven Green Baptist Church, led by John and Anne Spencer. And he invited me to come along just to see. And it was quite a remarkable experience for me because I pretty much from the first encounter really felt that I'd found my spiritual home, because I think we were looking at folks who were looking to apply the teachings of Jesus daily in their lives in a very practical way. The baptism in the Holy Spirit was welcomed. And that was something that I had experienced and encountered through an interesting route, but perhaps for another time. And we used to sing a chorus that said something along the lines of, "The day you showed me your family, my spirit arrived at home." And I had a strong sense as I met with these folks that my spirit had indeed arrived at my spiritual home. And of course, what's interesting, Ian, to reflect, you've spoken about the time, what's interesting to reflect is that of that original group of probably 25 people, of course, many have moved on, some have died. But there are still people that we're in fellowship with now who are part of that group, that we made a commitment to stay together and seek God's kingdom together and be Christians in a practical sense together. And it's quite interesting that some of those relationships, including our own excellent relationship, are still there as a testament to the importance and the depths of the feelings that we had at the time about this embryonic church.
Well, yeah, my route was a bit different. I remember when we first got to know each other, it was at I think they call it a house party or something.
Yeah.
In Sheldon.
That's right.
Sheldon. And there was some teaching during that weekend or whenever it was, which really, really hit home. But later, of course, we came across each other in this very same renewal group, as it was called. And again, interestingly, it was a friend of mine who pointed me towards it. And I discovered that not only did they meet in Upper Amherst room, which I knew anyway, I knew the place rather, but also about 200 yards from where I grew up. And John and Anne's house was also the venue for many of their meetings, where we were piled into their back room at the time, which later they helpfully extended, but it was quite packed. And I too was drawn to this. I just thought the similar thing. I didn't think I had a song for it, Naz, but I certainly felt that this was what I was looking for. Now, I had previous experience of what was called a house church, house church or fellowship, which had, while I was away at university, it had imploded. And I never really got to the bottom of that. But that didn't change my mind about that. I was looking for that sort of depth of commitment to people, and also a charismatic experience of church, and something that pointed, probably I didn't know the half of it, anywhere near that, but something within me was drawn to this. And I think before very long, not only you and me, but others, we're in this strong sort of committed relationship.
Yes.
And it sort of took us through difficult times, I think, because we were with John, the two of us were in leadership. We called it eldership at the time, in the early days of the church. And, it wasn't always easy, I don't think you'll agree, but we expanded the team, and that didn't necessarily, no, actually we had a larger team out of which the three of us were, sort of, became the eldership team, and we went through some, difficult times, but our commitment to one another, I think, held us through those times. So I wonder why, going back to the fundamental question, why is it that we felt there was a need for Ealing Fellowship, as we called it, to exist? From 1980, we started off, autonomously, if you like, but then subsequently we reached out for external input, which we might have time to get into briefly. Why do you think we needed to exist?
Sure. I'm going to pick up on the word commitment, Ian, first, if I may, and then I'll answer your question, because it's come up in that order. So commitment was very important in the early stages of the renewal group. And it was exemplified, first and foremost, by John and Anne. And it's their story, really, and perhaps be appropriate to ask Anne about it one day.
Yeah.
But the story is that John was offered the professor of surgery down in Bath, where he'd worked before. And that would have been a great job for him to take. It would have meant, living in a really nice part of the world, plenty of leisure activities, great schools for the kids, obviously a good salary pretty much anywhere if you're a professor of surgery, but also living in a house that would be substantially bigger than what one was able to purchase in London. And there was a lot to draw, but they felt that they couldn't take it because God had called and committed them to this, let's be honest, ragtag group of people that were this sort of embryonic church. And it was a tremendous sacrifice for them and a mark of their commitment. And many of us followed suit in that commitment, with people choosing houses and jobs and how they organized their time and money as an expression of that commitment. So I think commitment's quite an important word into the ethos of the early church, and probably contributes partly to the answer to the second question of why we exist. To answer that question more fully, I would say very simply this, without in any way criticizing anybody else, because one's perspectives were not necessarily accurate. But I think certainly for me, I was looking for something more than going to church on a Sunday morning, getting a little top up of something spiritual, listening to a great sermon with some good insights by some very gifted preachers, and then getting on with the rest of your life until the following Sunday morning, where it was repeat and continue. So I think with the fervour of youth, we were looking for a Christianity that was 24/7. We were looking for a Christianity that impacted our daily lives. We were looking for a Christianity that impacted the circles of influence that we moved in, whether that was work or our social circles or leisure circles or our neighbours. We were looking for a practical outworking of 24/7 Christianity. And I think it was that significantly that drew me towards this group, because I saw that that's what they were trying to do.
That's very, very good. I think, I mean, we probably attached to ourselves the sort of cave of Adullam sort of
we did
thing, you know, which is from, I think, 1 Samuel, but certainly from the story of David, you know, a lot of really sort of miscreants really all getting together.
Yeah.
And you're right, of course, that people did, you know, geographically relocate in order to be close enough to make real the weekday sort of commitment. And we did a lot of stuff together. There's no question about that. And, you know, we did have the, you know, we weren't only young people, but, you know, John actually very graciously gathered these young, slightly arrogant people around him, I suppose. And he, you know, he was a father figure to us, there's no question.
Yes.
And obviously, in your case, he became your father-in-law. But to me, certainly he was a father figure and very influential. And it didn't mean we all agreed all the time, because I think I could be quite argumentative actually in those days. Now, of course, I'm not. But no, we did actually have to work things through, and to, you know, risk boring people, the commitment level was such that we could sustain it. So we were, you know, an interesting mixture of people, but I think also a feature of our church life was a desire to, and in practice we did this, working with other churches, and that's continued, you know, to this day.
Well, very much so. I mean, you'll remember when R.T. Kendall was installed as the minister at Westminster Chapel, we invited R.T. to lunch, and we had a wonderful lunch at John's house with the leadership of the day. And certainly it was you, me and John, I can't remember who else. And R.T. came along and we had a great afternoon. And I hope he was encouraged that there were dynamic Christians who were seeking the presence and power of the Holy Spirit, who were wanting to encourage him and welcome him to Ealing and dialogue with him. And who knows, perhaps that might have been one of the roots that inspired him on his mission of the Spirit and the Word, which was one of the messages that R.T. brought.
And he either then or maybe later was very close friends with Gerald Coates, who was different, from a different, so he took a different route, shall we say. But for us also, and this is the sort of tail end of this discussion, I think, today, we also felt the importance of an external accountability, someone outside of our situation, in other words, who could speak into it. We invited that, we welcomed it, we encouraged it in every way. And, you know, it was that, in that respect, that we reached out to Gerald Coates. And this is before Pioneer had been, you know, existing as a name. But in effect, it was Pioneer, but it wasn't called that at that time. And, you know, the early days of the church were, you know, in effect, quite strongly influenced by Gerald and his ministry. I mean, I don't just mean he came to speak, but he met with us as a leadership and you know, worked through some of our, you know, difficulties and so on. And he was subsequently, of course, he handed over to others, in fact, and to Steve Clifford, who's now part of our church. So, you know, we've had a long history with Pioneer, and I think that probably Pioneer is a story for another time. But since these podcasts are not intended to be too long, I think that I'm going to say let's leave it there. But thank you very much for sharing some of your story.
Good to chat.
And we might well do it again, but there are other people who will have their own version. It might hopefully not be contradictory to us, but anyway, thanks very much for your time.
God bless. Thanks again.
Bye.
That's all for this episode of the Blessed Community Church podcast. We hope you enjoyed it and found it to be informative and inspiring. We would love for you to join us on a Sunday, either in person or online. For more information, please visit our website, blesscc.org. Thank you for tuning in, and we look forward to sharing more content with you soon. Have a great day.